folks, but just in case, this season you saw her on Hannibal, and you also know her as Stella Gibson on The Fall. If she could be someone else for a day, who would it be? Hopefully herself, Dana Scully, Gillian Anderson. And also over here, you know him now as Hank Moody on Showtime's hit Californication. He'd find a conspiracy at a church picnic. Spooky Mulder himself, David Duchovny. All right, guys, so 20 years. Chris, it's been 20 years. I'll let you delete your photo first. Chris, it's been 20 years. Okay, so first off, December 22, 2012. What happened? Did the aliens colonize? Are we all under the black oil now? What can you tell us?
They came, they're delaying their entrance.
Yeah, they take a little more time?
Yes.
So, talk about 20 years. Set up the scene for 1993. Actually, really 92 when you went in and pitched the show. It seems like a no-brainer, obviously, but back then, these kind of shows weren't necessarily in prime time. What was the reaction? What did you hear from Fox, and how hard was it to get this thing moving?
I think I've told this story about a million times. I pitched the show to Fox once. They said thank you very much. They didn't have anything like that. There was nothing like that on television. I went back and pitched it a second time with Peter Roth. I took some visual aids. They said yes, but I really don't think they knew what they had.
What were the visual aids?
Huh?
What visual aids?
Oh, I took some a survey and some stuff. Anyway, they said yes, but they didn't know what they had until I think that we finally aired.
So, Gillian and David, 20 years later, maybe tell us something about your character that you maybe didn't even realize at the time, but thinking back now, you have maybe a different perspective on the show or else on Mulder or Scully. I know, I start out with the hard questions first.
I don't know. Do you have anything?
I guess I didn't realize that Mulder was so cool until a few years later, and I thought, damn, should have gone there sooner. Not that it was my choice. Am I supposed to behave myself?
No, go on, please, go on.
Well, it took a long time, obviously, for Mulder and Scully to get together.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we ever did we?
Well, they're playing.
Something happened.
Yeah.
Because we had a child.
So someone did ask on Twitter the other day, Chris, are we ever going to finally get the Mulder Scully sex scene that the fans have been waiting for?
We shot it. It's somewhere.
Maybe you.
But you said that before.
I don't know, I can't.
It's been 20 years.
Let's bring in the writers. I mean, everyone. Howard, Vince. So talk about what the show meant to you and how it still influences the shows that you now executive produce. Yeah, Vince, you could go first.
Well, there'd be no Breaking Bad without the X-Files. I started off my association with the X-Files as a fan. I was sitting alone in my little house in Powhatan County, Virginia in 1993 in September, I think, of that year, and this new show came on. I only had 4 channels. I didn't have cable at that time. So I figured I'd give this thing a watch because it sounds like it's got aliens or something in it. And by the end of the first commercial break, I was hooked, and I was a fan, and I loved it. And when the opportunity arose for me to write for it, I felt very, very lucky. And I worked on it for 7 years, and I learned everything that I do know about producing television and writing for television from this job. And it was a great, great job. It was like going to film school, except getting paid to attend, and I was just lucky as hell I was a part of it.
Howard, you were gonna add something to that as well.
Well, I wasn't in Virginia. I was already in LA, but I did learn a lot and a tremendous amount. I keep on the words kind of come to mind are point of view. Chris always said, "What's the point of view here?" And I got to say, it was a group of people, I think, who taught each other, Glenn, Jim, Alex, Gonza, me, and Chris, and we really kind of figured it out on the fly, and I learned an awful lot, and I've carried it with me and think about it still.
So, David and Jillian, back to you guys. I mean, obviously you've gone on to fantastic careers post-X-Files, but you've enjoyed sort of dipping back into it with the 2008 movie, and you've both said that you'd be interested in doing it again. Is there just something about these characters, about this show, that you still sort of enjoy looking back at every once in a while, or?
Well, I always thought the show kind of had any possibility. The show was so flexible and could encompass so many different ideas that I think we could do it forever. Or I always thought whenever we can do it, come back together, we would. So we will. As much as we can. Yeah.
So, Chris, it's the big question. We might as well get it out of the way now. It's going to be the elephant in the room all hour. X-Files 3.
Well, we can get to it later.
Oh, Darren's starting a riot. Well, the other thing, and Howard knows a little something about this, because you guys are bringing back 24 for a limited series. Is that something Chris you would consider doing? Sort of and obviously David and Jillian, is that something you'd be?
No.
No?
Good answer.
No, but a film would be great.
Film would be great? All right. I mean, there's obviously a lot's changed in 20 years. Chris, how would the show look now? How if you were doing X-Files in 2013?
I don't think it would look all that much different. I mean, we sort of, the show is very dark and by design, and I don't think it would be a lot different. I think the technology has changed. I think it would probably, that would affect some things, but I think what we did is really what we would do now.
And one of the amazing things about it, when you look at the show, even though it took place in '93, it feels so relevant, especially with what's going on in the real world. But even back then, they were using technology that was advanced for its time. I mean, they were using cell phones in '93, and
No, I don't think we were. We were just talking about on the way up here how on the set of the pilot we had the cell phone that was a brick in a briefcase. So I don't think we actually used cell phones in the show for a couple of years, right?
I don't think so in the beginning.
Yeah.
well, I think one of the things I remember seeing is when Mulder needed to look up something, he actually goes to books and looks it up, which...
And all the writers did that, actually. That was before Google, and we had, I think our researcher in our last few years is actually here today, Katrina Cabrera. We started this show before the internet, really, so it was the old school.
Darren, talk about being Fluke Man. I know you've talked about it before and being in that costume, but more importantly, Eddie Van Blunt's The H is Silent. Two sort of, seminal moments for your career, I imagine.
The actors are listening.
It was just a dream to get to work with David and Jillian. Because being in the Fluke Man suit, you really got to interact, especially in the pool with David. I don't know quite what else more to say about that.
And John, your son played Scully's baby at 6 weeks old.
Indeed. It was end of season 8, and he had just been born, and he had reddish kind of hair. And I remember Michelle McLaren, who was our producer at the time, said, "Wait, why don't we use Jerry as Scully's baby?" And now he's here actually. Give him a shout out, Jerry.
He looks like me. That's our son.
Yeah.
up to these days, Chris?
William.
He's in
from
rehab.
backstage.
But Shoma thought, well, let's talk about, I mean, the comic book just came out, and that's season 10. You have officially blessed it. So a lot of people are wondering, how canon is that? And would these storylines sort of feed into whatever you do next, a movie or what have you?
No, it's a comic book series, so I think the stories really sort of are more comic booky. But we wanted to make them sort of true to the characters, and the writer Joe Harris has really good ideas, so I think they're going to be terrific on their own. They're called Season 10, but they're kind of their own mythology.
And yeah, 'cause we're starting to see a lot of the old characters, what Skinner's been up to, he's been promoted, and Doggett and Reyes are going to show up. Is there a chance we'll ever see those two again on the big screen?
I think that's your trick question.
I'm trying, guys, I'm trying. Well, let's, Vince, John, and Chris. Let's, the three characters I think everyone loved, and I think we were all bummed to see go were the Lone Gunmen. You guys ever look back and say, maybe we shouldn't have killed them, or was that obviously just sort of part of the life cycle of the show?
We had a big argument about that, as I recall.
Yeah.
You wanna take that?
No. No, they're great characters created by these gentlemen right here, and and Vince and Chris and Frank and I did the spin-off, and they're just such amazing characters, and they were Braidwood was a crew member and gets cast, but they were just great, and so when it came the time when the Lone Gunmen series was not picked up, that's when the discussion started. What do we do? How do we, we want to give closure to people. And, their death came up, and some of us were against it, some of us were for it. And I think it was an honorable death.
I think that people don't know that the character played by Braidwood, Frohickey, that his name was supposed to be Frohike, wasn't it? Was it Frohike, the pronunciation originally? I'm actually asking you, Jimmy Lynn.
Oh, no, it was Frohickey.
Was it Frohickey?
I remember Frohickey was a first AD on the show.
Great.
Yeah, and we were trying to cast, I was in Vancouver trying to cast the show, and I remember looking at all these actors, and I thought, Braidwood looks freakier than anybody I've seen. So he was the only AD I know in history to have been an AD on a show and became a star of a brand new show. So it was very interesting.
And Morgan and Wong, I call you that just because that's what we always refer to you. You probably hate that by now, but I know, and you guys have been asked a lot through the years about home, but I went back and watched that episode last week, and it's such an amazing episode, and in some ways, one that, was so ahead of its time. You guys tired of talking about that, or are you still are you still proud of it? Are you sick of answering, about how Fox, deciding to, pull it off the schedule?
Jim and I had gone off and we did a show called Space Above and Beyond, and thank you. And kind of thought that got the shaft a little bit, and said to Chris, we're coming back, we're going to write 4 episodes. I'm going to write these episodes for the members of the show, the cast members that didn't expose them to a wider audience, and Chris said, okay. So you have Rodney, Morgan, and Joel. I want to put them in something, and the Peacock brothers just was too much prosthetic, so he kind of put them through other stuff. But I think any of these guys can tell you that any episode or story has a lot of different sources. Kristen, my wife back there, told me, you gotta watch this movie, Brothers Keeper, by these guys, Bruce and Joe. They did the documentary on the first one on the West Memphis 3. And it was these 3 brothers, and there were 4 of them up in Syracuse, where Darren and I grew up, and it was a great documentary. And they were kind of incestuous. You didn't know if they had murdered each other and all this kind of stuff. It's a great documentary. Well, no, check it out. And from that, Jim and I were coming back to this, and you start thinking about home and people you love, and first and foremost, you should always approach what's happening with the characters, and it seemed like an opportunity to talk about where Scully would be, wanting to be a mother, and what their relationship was, and what it was like to come home. And there was actually a place called home in Pennsylvania, so set it there. I had read it's Charlie Chaplin's autobiography, and I don't know, I never went back and looked, so if anyone goes, that's not what happened, okay, but my memory is that Charlie Chaplin, when he was in musical theater, what we would call vaudeville, and he had to take residence in a tenement house, and there's a family there, and they take they have dinner, and they take a liking to Chaplin, because, who wouldn't? And they go, oh, we want to show you something. We like you, we want to show you something. And they took him back to this room, and had one gas flame or a bare bulb, and just a cot. And under the cot, they roll out a teenage boy with no arms and legs, and they stood him up, and the family kind of clapped and sang, and the boy kind of danced, and then they put him back